So I wanted to share this opinion piece that was posted on May 6th, 2025 by Jason Shavili. And it says, in the status quo on the Temple Mount, the dictators of the Arab world sure have a lot of chutzpah, claiming that we Jews don't respect their holy sites when they clearly have no respect for ours. For example, Qatar, the world's leading sponsor of Islamic terrorism, aside from Iran, reacted angrily when a group called the Temple Mount activists posted an AI-generated video on the internet that envisioned the reconstruction of the Jewish temple, replacing the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, now situated on the Temple Mount. The country's rulers issued a statement calling the video a dangerous provocation that could significantly escalate violence in the region, especially amid the ongoing war on the Gaza Strip. But you know, God can stop these people cold in their tracks, and he can prevent, as he has, the rebuilding of the temple all of these years. But similarly, after Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir visited the Temple Mount earlier this month, Jordan issued a statement calling his visit a dangerous escalation, an unacceptable provocation, a violation of the sanctity of Al-Aqsa Mosque, and a breach of its historical and legal status quo. But, I mean, do they ever take into consideration that the Islamists were invaders in the land and took the Temple Mount, and the Ottoman Turks had it in their possession for 400 years, up until, I believe it was 1917, when the British came in and fought them off for the first time in 400 years and took the control over the area. That's why the king in the last days could be the British king, King Charles III. And that's just one little tiny reason. But for those of you who are wondering, the status quo that Jordan's Hashemite tyrants are referring to is the arrangement by which Jews are forbidden from praying on the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, and can only visit it at certain times. Praying on the Mount is a privilege reserved exclusively for Muslims, and this is what Israel agreed to following the reunification of Jerusalem in the 1967 war, and reaffirmed its commitment to the 1994 Israeli-Jordanian peace treaty. And despite the fact that this arrangement is outrageous and anti-Semitic to the core, Israel has adhered to it for nearly 60 years. But let me just add something right there. Actually, the ultra-Orthodox Jewish rabbis don't want the Jews up there in an unclean state. They don't want them to desecrate the Temple Mount by being unclean. So the red heifer is what their aim is, to try to, put the ashes of the red heifer on the Jews so that they can go up and not only the people, the priests performing the ceremonies up there, but also so that all Jews worldwide can then be considered clean and come up and pray on the Temple Mount. So really, the rabbinical group of people has also been keeping them from praying on the Temple Mount. And it says, yet we are still accused by Arab dictators of engaging in provocations. May I remind these tyrants that their forefathers built the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque on the site where our first and second temples once stood. I'd call that a provocation. May I also remind them that for the better part of the last century, they have shown nothing but disrespect for our holy sites. For example, when the Jordanians controlled East Jerusalem, including the Old City and the Temple Mount between 1949 and 1967, they destroyed several Old City synagogues while using others to house animals or refuse. Not one Jew was allowed to pray at the Western Wall for 19 years. And they also vandalized Jewish cemeteries and burned Jewish Torah scrolls and holy books. I'd call these actions provocations, to say the least. Today, our Arab neighbors disrespect our holy sites, continues The Waqf, the Islamic body responsible for administrating the Temple Mount, known to Muslims as Haram al-Sharif, has frequently engaged in illegal digging at the site. In 1999, for instance, it disposed of more than 9,000 tons of dirt mixed with invaluable archaeological artifacts, which are now being salvaged by the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Now I have something to say about this, but let me finish the article. In the region of Samaria, which they call the northern West Bank, illegal Palestinian construction has caused significant damage to the site of Shomron, the ancient capital of the northern kingdom of Israel in biblical times. In Shechem, Nablus, Joseph's tomb has become the frequent target of Palestinian vandals and attacks on Jewish worshippers. After Palestinians attacked the site in the year 2000, Israel withdrew, and the Palestinian Authority promised to protect the site. Not surprisingly, they didn't keep that promise, prompting Israel to reassert some control over the site. Today, Jewish worshippers can only pray at Joseph's tomb under heavily armed escort by the IDF. I'd say it's time for Israel to stop listening to the hypocritical accusations of Arab dictators and start reasserting its control of Judaism's holiest sites. For starters, we should tear up the status quo on the Temple Mount. A Jewish state should not be in the business of preventing Jews from worshiping at their most holy site. Jews should have the same right to pray on the Mount as Muslims, and if Arab dictators and their followers don't like it, too bad. So that's an opinion piece by Jason Shvili. And I wanted to say right there, did they ever take into consideration that the Second Temple was completely desecrated, so God allowed it to be destroyed by their enemies coming in and setting it ablaze? And, they scraped all the gold off the temple and, the rocks and stones that were there. They flipped them over when the gold was melting and pouring down in the cracks and all. And all of this area was defiled when God allowed the Second Temple to be completely obliterated and destroyed. When Titus and his army came in, and then there were other zealots and rebels that were also causing a problem, according to Flavius Josephus. So it's very interesting to me that, did they ever think, because that dirt is remnants of defiled artifacts from two desecrated temples, that God may be actually allowing Israel's enemies to do all the dirty work, to dig out the defiled part and dump it somewhere, thinking that they're real happy with themselves for doing such an act. But in reality, maybe God is actually using their enemies to remove the defiled part so that the new part can come, so that the last days can be fulfilled with the Jews reinstating another temple for their last 7 years, while we, as the spiritual temple, the church that includes Jews, Gentiles, goes up to be with Jesus in the glory cloud. And this is another way of thinking about them illegally digging and taking those things out, because they have found Babylonian arrowheads from the siege of Babylon in that dirt, because they've been working on digging through all of that dirt that they ripped out of there and dumped. And of course it was moved, I think it's over on the Mount of Olives, where you have tents set up and people come and volunteer to sift through that project. And it's been going on for years now. So I see it as God is using their enemies to clear out what was defiled. And then, he's still waiting for them to accept him as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But once again, the area will be defiled, and the Messiah will have to come down from heaven in the second coming and take the throne of David and reign there in Jerusalem. So this is one way to look at it, you know, instead of getting angry and saying, oh, they removed all this dirt. Maybe they're being directed to do all the work so that the Jews don't have to remove it or remove the defiled stuff, you know. So I think that's very interesting and a really new way of looking at it, because this is kind of what the Lord was putting on my heart about it. Anyway, this is very fascinating, and I just wanted to share some more information with you about the Temple Mount and the situation and how they view it. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. All right, well, I'll see you later.